As I pointed out to you on last Sunday, when we consider the ways that Paul uses the word learned, he is not talking about academic accumulation or intellectual assent, but rather he is speaking of experience. Are y'all in this place? In other words, contentment is something you come to know after you've gone through some stuff. Contentment is what comes about after you've experienced some things. Contentment is something you're introduced to after you live a little bit. I wish I had somebody. Paul says, I've been through some things. He says, I've seen some things. He says, I've survived some things. And because of those experiences, I've learned some things. He says, not only have I learned some things about God, but I've learned some things about myself. Are y'all in here? And saints of God, I've discovered that every now and then, God will put you in some situations. God will let you go through some situations. God will let you endure some situations in order to teach you some things, number one, about him, but then to teach you some things about yourself. Let me pause for a minute and make sure I got the right notes for the right crowd. Is there anybody here honest enough to admit that you've been through some things, you've experienced some things, you've suffered through some things, and because of what you've seen, because of what you've experienced, not only have you learned some things about God, but you've learned some things about yourself. I wish I had somebody. You fought and you told people there was no way you could handle it until you found yourself in the middle of it. I wish I had somebody. You thought that there was some stuff you just wouldn't put up with until you found yourself facing it. You thought there was some stuff would just kill you dead until you dealt with it and then lived to tell about it. I wish I had somebody. You see, God needed to show you that you could handle it, and the only way to show you was to put you in the situation, then keep you in the situation, so that when you came out of the situation, you would have information, you would have revelation, and that you would have confirmation that you can lean and depend on God. Am I preaching to anybody in here? Is there anybody that can testify, preacher, when I went through it, I wasn't real sure about it, but now I know that I know that I know if I can't lean on nobody else, I can lean on God. If I can't depend on nobody else, I can depend on God. Paul said, I learned some things. And what he learned, you all, gave him a sense of contentment about both his circumstance and his situation. Every now and then I have to have a conversation with Paul to make sure I'm really understanding what it is that I'm supposed to get out of this text, because if I don't get it, I can't help you get it. Are y'all praying with me? So I said, Paul, I've been preaching this same text for the last 3 Sundays. I really believe I'm supposed to preach it one more time. I said, but for the last 3 Sundays I've been talking to the commentary. Now I want to talk to you. I wish I had somebody. I said, Paul, can you tell me what it is that you've learned and how you came about learning it? He said, Chris, you should have asked me in week number 1, but at least you asked me before the sermon was over. I wish I had somebody. He says, Chris, here's what you need to understand. He says, since I've been locked up, he said, there were days when I did not have a dime. He said, nobody came by and put any money on my book. He said, there were times when I could not go to the commissary. He said, there were seasons when the other inmates wouldn't let me have anything. He said, but Chris, don't feel sorry for me. He said, because I learned some things. I said, Paul, what did you learn? He said, I learned that my God shall supply all of my need according to his riches. I said, that's good right there, Paul. He said, wait. He said, don't hang up the phone yet. That ain't all I learned. I said, keep talking, Paul. He said, Chris, since I've been on death row, he said, the guards have said all kind of mean stuff about me. They've said all kind of nasty things to me. He said, but you know, through it all, I learned some things. I said, Paul, what did you learn? I said, Paul, what do you learn when folks say nasty stuff to you and say nasty stuff about you? He said, preacher, I learned that no weapon formed against me shall be able to prosper, and every tongue that rises against me, God will condemn. He said, don't hang up yet. I learned some more stuff. I said, Paul, what did you learn? He said, Chris, I'm not real sure when my execution is coming. He said, 2 times they've scheduled to put me to death. He said, but each time something came up to delay the execution. He said, now my fellow inmates are confused by why it's taking so long to put me to death, because Nero has both the position and the power to take me out. He said, so I've just been stuck here waiting. He said, but in the midst of the wait, I've learned some things. I say, Paul, what did you learn? He said, the reason I didn't get offended with the guards, he said, the reason I didn't cuss Nero out, the reason I'm not having a mental breakdown is because I learned we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Therefore, I got feet and stand. I wish I had somebody. He said, but that ain't all, Chris. I said, Paul, you learned something else? He said, God, yes. I said, Paul, what did you learn? He said, during my incarceration. He said, wait. Before I tell you this, you got to promise me you won't tell anybody. I told Paul I wouldn't go tell it, y'all, but I'm going to tell y'all, but you got to promise not to tell anybody else, so y'all praying with me. He said, but even in my ministry, I had some weak moments. I said, what, Paul? He said, it was during the days of my incarceration that I really thought I could not take anymore. He said, I could not find the strength to go another day. He said, I really thought I had reached my breaking point. 2 or 3 times I told the Lord I didn't want to suffer anymore. Lord, just take me out. He said, Lord, I'm not moved by all that stuff that they're going to say about me in their churches. Lord, I cannot take anymore. I said, not you, Paul. Paul, you didn't feel like quitting. You didn't feel like doing it. He said, yes, I did, preacher. He said, but I learned some things. I said, Paul, what did you learn? He said, I learned that I can do all things through Christ who strengthened me. I wish I had somebody in here. Now, they're about 8 of y'all. They're about 8 of y'all. You ain't moved. You ain't clapped. You ain't nodded. You ain't said amen. But maybe that's because you ain't never been through nothing. You ain't never had to deal with nothing. You ain't never suffered through nothing. But I ought to have about 5 of y'all in here that can testify. You ain't had it this good all your life. You've not always been where you are right now. You've not always had what you got right now. But when you went through some things, you learned some things about God. Is there anybody that can testify, preacher, I went through some things, but I learned some things while I was going through it. Now. Since this is the 4th straight Sunday that I preach this same text, let me show you the last 1 or 2 things I see, and we're going to get on out of here. Is that all right? The first thing I want to suggest is that the text is able to teach that contentment is about sufficiency. Contentment is about sufficiency. You see, contentment is not a statement about your situation. It's a statement about your sufficiency in that situation. Okay, you're looking at me funny. Let me keep working. Contentment is not about what you're going through. It's about the attitude you got while you're going through. I can't get no help in here. It's not about what you're going through. It's about the attitude you have while you're going through it. See, too many of us, watch this now. I ain't talking about you. I'm talking about your neighbor. Too many of us like to speak about the situation. You like to complain about how bad it is and how tough it is and how rough it is. All you want to do is talk about the situation. We say good morning, you talk about your situation. Ask you how your day, you talk about the situation. We talking about soap operas, you talking about your situation. We talking about Lucius and Cookie, you talking about your situation. But here's the problem. You're so busy talking about your situation, you've not slowed down long enough to realize God is keeping you while you're in that situation. I wish I had some help in here today.